I still remember that moment like it was yesterday. I walked up to the entrance of one of the most exclusive fashion events in the city, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. I was wearing a dress I had made myself, a little different, a little rough around the edges, but filled with meaning. It wasn't from any fancy brand, it was made from recycled fabric, hand-stitched with care. As I approached the security guard, I noticed him glancing at me with a smirk. Then, without warning, he let out a loud, mocking laugh. "What are you wearing?" he sneered, loud enough for others nearby to hear. His laughter echoed, drawing curious and judgmental eyes toward me. I could feel the weight of those eyes, their silent questions, their assumptions. To them I looked out of place, like someone who didn't belong there. And the guard? He thought it was hilarious that I dared to step foot inside looking the way I did. But what he didn't know, what nobody did at that moment, was that I wasn't just anyone. I wasn't just some random woman in an odd outfit. I was a world-renowned fashion designer, one who had fought hard to be here. The dress I wore wasn't cheap, it was a statement, a symbol of everything I stood for: creativity, courage, and the power to change how people see beauty. And that laugh, it was the last thing he ever should have said to me. Before I became the person standing outside that fancy event, I was just a little girl growing up in a small, worn-down neighborhood. It wasn't the kind of place people talked about with pride. The streets were cracked, and the buildings looked tired. Most days the power would go out, and food on the table was never guaranteed. My mother was a single woman, working 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. She wasn't wealthy, but she had a heart full of love, and a spirit that refused to break. She taught me something important from a very young age: how to see beauty where others only saw trash or broken things. When I was about 7 years old, she gave me a little sewing kit. It was old, with rusty needles and faded thread, but to me, it was magic. She said, "If you can fix what's broken, you can make anything beautiful." I spent hours digging through scraps of fabric she collected from neighbors and old clothes nobody wanted. I learned how to stitch by hand, slowly turning these scraps into small dresses and shirts for my dolls. School was never easy. Most kids noticed my worn clothes right away. They didn't understand why I wore things that looked so different, so cheap. I was called names: raggedy, poor girl, and worse. Sometimes their words hurt so much I wanted to disappear. But in those moments, I found strength in my creativity. I remember sitting by the window in my tiny room, sewing by the dim light of a candle, dreaming of a different life. I wanted to make clothes that told stories of hope, of courage, and of beauty that didn't come from a price tag. My mother always told me, "Don't ever let the world tell you who you are or what you can become." And so I kept sewing. Even though my clothes were handmade and looked nothing like the flashy brands everyone else wore, they were mine. Every stitch carried a piece of my heart. Looking back, those early days shaped everything I am today. They taught me that beauty isn't about where you come from, or what you wear, it's about how you see the world and how you choose to create. And even though the world can be cruel, sometimes it's the broken places that hold the most light. As I grew older, my love for fashion only grew stronger. In my teenage years, while other kids were busy with parties or hanging out, I spent my afternoons working at a small thrift store near my house. It wasn't glamorous work, but it gave me something I needed: a chance to save money. Every penny I earned went straight into buying bits of fabric or sewing supplies. During the nights, after everyone had gone to sleep, I would pull out my worn sketchbook. With a tired hand but a hopeful heart, I drew designs: dresses, jackets, shoes, anything I dreamed of creating one day. I didn't have fancy teachers or expensive books, but the internet became my classroom. I watched tutorials, read blogs, and learned everything I could about fashion design. When I finally felt ready, I applied to several fashion schools. I thought this was my ticket out, my chance to be seen and heard. But the replies I received were crushing: rejection after rejection. They said I didn't have the right background, the right connections, or the perfect portfolio. Sometimes the words felt like sharp knives, cutting away at my confidence. But I refused to let those no's define me. Instead, I kept working harder. I created clothes for myself, for my friends, even for strangers who saw my small online shop. Slowly I started sharing my designs on social media. I posted pictures, shared my story, and told the world that fashion could be more than just labels and money. People started to notice. Little by little, messages came in, encouragement from strangers, requests for custom pieces, even offers to collaborate. It wasn't easy. I still faced doubts, still worried if I was good enough, but deep down, my dream kept burning, no matter how many times I was told I couldn't. I held on to the belief that one day, my designs would speak for themselves. Because dreams don't die just because someone tries to snuff them out. They live on, quietly, waiting for the right moment to shine. Then one day, something happened that changed everything. Though at first, it didn't seem like much. I had posted one of my designs on social media, just like I always did. It was a simple dress made from old curtains and leftover fabric, but I loved it. It told a story of hope and second chances, just like me. To my surprise, a famous fashion blogger with thousands of followers saw it and decided to repost it. Suddenly, my small corner of the internet exploded. My inbox filled up with messages from people I had never met, some just praising my work, others asking if I could make something for them. Small brands reached out, asking if I wanted to collaborate. For the first time, I felt like maybe I was being noticed, not for where I came from, but for what I could create. One brand invited me to design a small collection for a local runway show. It wasn't Paris or Milan, but it was a start, a real start. I threw myself into the work, pouring all the lessons from my childhood and teenage years into every stitch. That first runway show was nerve-wracking. I still remember standing backstage, heart pounding, wondering if anyone would like my designs. But when the models walked out, wearing clothes made from recycled fabrics and simple materials, the crowd's reaction was more than I could have hoped for. They saw the beauty I always believed was there. Even as my designs gained attention, I stayed true to my roots. I didn't suddenly start wearing expensive brands or dressing like the rich and famous. To me, style wasn't about labels or price tags. It was about creativity, confidence, and telling a story. So, when I showed up to events or meetings, I often wore my own handmade clothes, sometimes rough, sometimes bold, but always real. People would sometimes look at me oddly, maybe even judge silently. But I didn't care, because I knew who I was, and I knew where I came from. That breakthrough was just the beginning. It opened doors I never imagined possible, but it also reminded me to stay grounded, to keep creating from the heart, and to never forget that beauty can come from the simplest places. And that's exactly what I wanted to share with the world, fashion that's not just about what you wear, but who you are beneath it all. Back to that evening, the night I arrived at the exclusive fashion gala. This wasn't just any event. I had been invited as a featured designer, someone whose work was supposed to inspire others. But instead of feeling proud, I felt nervous. I wore a piece I had made myself, like always. It was experimental, a dress crafted from recycled fabrics, layered in ways that told a story about renewal and hope. It wasn't flashy or covered in designer labels. It was raw, honest, and full of meaning. As I approached the grand entrance, the security guard eyed me up and down. His look wasn't just curious, it was judgmental. When I handed him my invitation, he scoffed and said under his breath, "You sure you belong here?" Before I could answer, he let out a loud, cruel laugh. It wasn't just quiet mocking, it was a laugh meant to embarrass, to make me feel out of place. People nearby glanced over, their whispers growing louder. I could hear snickers, and the sting of their eyes burning into me like invisible daggers. In that moment, I felt every doubt and fear I'd ever had come rushing back. Maybe they were right. Maybe I didn't belong here. Maybe my clothes were too different, too strange. But then something inside me steadied. I straightened my back and met the guard's eyes. I was more than just a weird outfit. I was the designer whose work would soon be on the runway inside. Still, the guard laughed. He thought I was lost, or trying to sneak into a world I wasn't part of. What he didn't know was that I had fought my whole life to get to this moment, and I wasn't about to let his laughter stop me. Just as the security guard's laughter echoed louder, a sudden voice cut through the noise. "Wait. Stop right there." An assistant from inside the venue hurried out, her eyes wide and full of surprise. She looked straight at me, then back at the guard, and said firmly, "She's on the guest list. In fact, she's the keynote designer for tonight's show." The security guard's face dropped. The smirk vanished, replaced by shock and embarrassment. He stammered, unable to find the words to explain himself. The crowd that had been whispering and snickering fell silent, their eyes flicking between me and the guard, like a slow-motion wave of disbelief. Suddenly I wasn't the odd one out anymore. I was the reason people had gathered here tonight. The assistant took my hand gently, guiding me through the grand entrance, as event organizers hurried to apologize for the confusion. Cameras began flashing from every direction, reporters and photographers swarmed around, eager to capture this unexpected moment. People who had earlier glanced at me with disdain, now looked on with curiosity and respect. Some even nodded approvingly, as if to say, "So this is the woman behind those designs we've heard about." The energy in the room shifted. I was no longer just the girl in the handmade dress. I was the visionary who had transformed discarded fabric into art. Backstage, I was introduced to the team who had been waiting for me. Designers, models and event planners, all sharing smiles and warm welcomes. They told me how much my work had inspired them, how my dedication to sustainable fashion was changing the industry. It was overwhelming, and yet it felt like home. In that moment, I realized that all the years of struggle, rejection and hard work had led me here, to a place where I was not judged by what I wore, but celebrated for what I created. The guard who laughed was nowhere to be seen. Tonight, I wasn't just attending a gala, I was about to take center stage, and everything was about to change. The moment the lights dimmed and the music started, everything changed. Models began to walk down the runway wearing my designs, bold, daring and unlike anything most had seen before. Each piece told a story, recycled fabrics transformed into elegant gowns, rough textures softened into flowing shapes, colors blending like a painter's canvas. The crowd was silent at first. You could hear a pin drop, every eye was fixed on the stage, every breath held tight in awe. Then, slowly whispers turned into applause. People began to see what I had always believed: beauty doesn't have to be perfect or expensive. It can be raw, real, sustainable, and the dress I had worn to the gala, the one that earned that cruel laugh at the door, it was now the centerpiece of the show. Critics called it genius, praising how it challenged the idea of fashion and luxury. Fashion editors whispered to each other, some even coming up to me after the show with wide eyes, saying, "You are the future of couture, you're changing everything." Meanwhile, in the back of the room, I spotted the security guard, the same man who laughed at me just moments before. His face was pale, eyes avoiding mine. I could see the shame washing over him like a wave. For him, the moment must have been humbling, realizing that the woman he mocked was the very reason everyone was here. But I didn't feel anger or revenge. Instead, I felt something stronger: pride. Pride in how far I had come, in what I had created, and in the journey that had brought me here. This night wasn't just about fashion, it was about breaking down walls, about changing the way we see each other, and about believing in yourself when no one else does. And as the applause filled the room, I knew that this was only the beginning. After all the lights faded and the crowd slowly left, I found a quiet moment to think. It struck me how often people are judged by the way they look, by the clothes they wear, the labels they carry, or the first impression they make. That night, I saw it firsthand. The security guard laughed at me because of what he saw on the outside, never stopping to wonder what was beneath. But that's a lesson I've learned over and over through my journey: appearances can be deceiving. Today, I run a design school for girls from low-income neighborhoods, girls like me, who have dreams but lack the resources. I want them to know that fashion isn't just about showing off or fitting in, it's about telling stories, expressing who you are, and making something beautiful out of what others might throw away. I teach them to see value in the broken and the imperfect, just like my mother taught me. As for the guard, I hope he learned something that night too. I hope he realized that not every diamond shines with a flashy surface. Sometimes, it's the ones hidden beneath rough skin that shine the brightest. Because real beauty comes from heart, courage, and the strength to keep creating, even when the world doubts you. And that's the story I want to share with everyone. Don't judge someone by what you see, there's always more beneath the surface. Sometimes the world is quick to judge. We see someone, and make a snap decision based on their clothes, their looks, or their place in life. But those first impressions often hide the real story. Some of the brightest stars rise from the darkest places, the ones that have been overlooked, underestimated, or even laughed at. I was once that girl, mocked for what I wore, doubted for where I came from. But I never stopped believing in myself or my dreams. Because sometimes, the one you laugh at, is the one who changes everything. So next time you see someone who seems different or out of place, remember there's always more beneath the surface. Beauty isn't just in what we wear, or how we look, it's in our courage, our passion, and the stories we carry inside. And sometimes, those stories are the most powerful things of all. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who's ever been underestimated or doubted. Leave a comment below, have you ever been judged unfairly? I'd love to hear your story, and don't forget to subscribe, for more powerful true-to-life stories, that remind us all to look deeper, feel more, and never stop believing in our worth. Thank you for listening, and being part of this journey.